Now, millions of underage girls around the world are forced into marriages each year. In fact, there was a recent story in the New York Times of a young woman that recently, of course, made headlines after she claimed that she was forced to marry her rapist at the age of 11. So, now this is something that happens a lot in third world countries, but what made this story so shocking is that this didn't happen in the Middle East or Tanzania or some other country. This happened in Florida. Now, the girl's name is Sherry Johnson, and she claims that she was raped 4 times by members of her church congregation as a child. As a result of these repeated sexual assaults, these repeated rapes, she ended up becoming pregnant at the age of 10. 10? Are you serious? 10. Now, when investigators began looking into her case, and it gets worse from here, she says that her family, instead of facing up and trying to get that rapist, trying to get justice for her rape, the family instead tried to protect her rapist by forcing them into a marriage. A marriage. That is horrific. What kind of family does that? Look, I'm going to be honest. I don't have any kids, okay? But I couldn't imagine having a daughter, knowing that she was raped, and then protecting the rapist. Who does that? That's horrific. That is the last person that I would fight to protect. Rape itself is bad enough, but adding the fact that she was 10 years old and then became a mother because of it, and then had to get married. This is too much. It's too much. In fact, the article says that she was raped by both a minister and a parishioner and ended up giving birth to a daughter at 10 years old. And there is a birth certificate that confirms that story. Now, a judge had approved the marriage in order to end the rape investigation. Now, the judge, in this case, a woman, says, what we want for you, the girl, to get married. We want you to get married. Oh. Now, Miss Johnson, who is now much older, so this story happened, a long time ago. Now, this woman, she recalled to the New York Times a conversation between her and her mother on the issue after she had obviously become pregnant. She said, my mom asked me if I wanted to get married. And I said, I don't know. What is marriage? How do I act like a wife? And her mother said, well, I guess you're just going to get married. Look, aside from how wrong those parents are and how they force their daughter to marry somebody that I would consider a pedophile, again, her rapist was in her 20s. The one that she ended up marrying was at least 10 years older than she was. How is this even legal? How is this legal in America? How is he not arrested for this rape? Well, it turns out Florida doesn't have any laws against child marriage. So they covered up the rape and they said, well, just get married. And then there was a judge in Florida that was willing to marry them, a 10-year-old and a 20-year-old. And look, Florida, again, they never had any laws against child marriage, and they still do not have laws against child marriage. In fact, Florida, according to the New York Times, is one of the 27 U.S. states that permits children of any age to be married with their parents' permission. Now, obviously, there's a lot of reasons why getting married at 10 years old or any 14, 16, whatever, below the age of consent at least, there's a lot of reasons why that's a bad thing to do. Now, Johnson recalls it was a terrible life, recounting her years as a child raising children. She missed school and remembers spending her days changing diapers, arguing with her husband, and struggling to pay expenses. She ended up with pregnancy after pregnancy, 9 children in all, while her husband periodically abandoned her. She says they took the handcuffs from handcuffing him, referring, of course, to the risk he faced for arrest for rape, to handcuffing me by marrying me without me knowing what I was doing. Now, some of the other reasons: you can't get a job, you can't get a car, you can't get a license, you can't sign a lease. Why allow someone to marry while they're still so young? So what she's doing is that she's actually taking on the issue of child marriage. So she's fighting against this, and she's sponsoring, she's going around trying to spread idea of sponsoring legislation to stop child marriage in America. And I think the first thing is to let people know that this is still happening in the United States, which is an amazing thing. It blows your mind because, like, wait a minute, this is not what we do here in America. We don't let children get married here in America. That's what happens in other places. No, it actually happens here. There are 27 different states that have that will allow this because they have no age set, or no minimum age set for marriage. So now Ms. Johnson, after she got out of that marriage, which eventually fell apart, as most of them do, she wrote a book, called Forgiving the Unforgivable. Now that story inspired Florida State Representative Cynthia Stafford to sponsor a bill outlawing child marriage in Florida. Ms. Stafford said, "Marriage is an adult responsibility. We don't want them to vote. We don't want them to drink alcohol. They can't drive a car. Yet we allow them to marry under 16? Hey, man, there's just some pretty good reasons aside from the fact that I think, personally, that it's wrong to marry off your underage kids. Especially when it has to do with covering up rape crimes. I think if you're covering up a rape, you might as well be implicated in the rape. You're covering it up. Why would you do that? Now, again, this is something that a lot of people criticize people in the Middle East for doing. And yet, this is happening in Florida and a lot of other places. And oftentimes, Johnson says girls were married in order to hide rapes from the church elders. So, what is America doing about it now that we're starting to get a notice on, hey, man, this is happening in America. Maybe we should do something about it. Well, what are we doing? Apparently nothing. Both Ms. Stafford's legislation and a matching Senate bill died in committee. A similar law was also shot down by the New Hampshire state legislature this year. And earlier this month, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie vetoed a law that would have outlawed child marriage without exception. He said in a statement, "An exclusion without exceptions would violate the cultures and traditions of some communities in New Jersey based on religious traditions." Well, you know what? There are some traditions that need to go. Fuck your traditions. Fuck your religious exceptions. And if this is part of your culture, fuck your culture. I don't care if it's your culture. And look, when it comes to cultural heritages, I'm sure some people will argue, hey man, this is part of our culture. It's part of their culture. We can't go and we can't infringe on that. No, fuck your culture. Sometimes what you do in your culture is shit and you need to change. Okay? Look, in some places, for example, the culture and the tradition is that women are kidnapped from their villages, raped, and then forced to marry. That is cultural tradition. Female genital mutilation is cultural tradition in some of these places and also can be part of a religious practice as well. And you know what? Turns out all of those things that I just mentioned are terrible, and should not be allowed to continue. As a legislature, your job is to protect those people who cannot protect themselves. So I don't want to hear Chris Christie out there saying, oh, we got to protect the children. What about the children? We got to protect them from marijuana, for example. He won't make marijuana legal in the state of New Jersey. Got to protect the children, man. We got to protect the children from the transgendered people. But you're fine with people marrying off their children to rapists. Come on, man. And it's not just him, but it seems like a lot of different legislators in this country, in these states, do not want to end this practice. Even though our own State Department regularly denounces other countries for doing the same thing. Now, let me give you an example of let me give you the states, that have the highest amount of child marriages. Do you know what they are? I'll give you a guess. Here are they in order, from highest to lowest. And this is the top 5, by the way. Texas, Florida at number 2, Kentucky at number 3, Alabama at number 4, and Tennessee. And again, there are 27 states that this is legal in. There is no minimum age for marriage. Thousands of girls, man. Thousands of girls over the last 10 years, or I'm sorry, from 2000 to 2010, hundreds of thousands of girls. Just in the United States. Maybe instead of us going after other countries, denouncing them for doing the same thing, maybe we should solve the problem on a national scale. Maybe put an age limit on legal marriage. Now, it won't stop the current rape cover-up issue. True. But at the very least, we can make sure that we don't trap girls into sham marriages with their abusers. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.